Alrighty, welcome back, and thanks for your patience in waiting. I'm glad to see that the cycle is in motion now. 2-weekly cycle we was talking about, and some of the information that I posted across Twitter about UB and the World Bank Group's report. There's not just that, there's variant amount of other stuff that's been happening. Good, be it good, or be it bad, subject to interpretation, I guess you could say, or perspective. Like for instance, with the first one being US sanctions for the poison attack. Whilst it's only a marginal comment, with the hope that people do hear it, or the right people hear it, in this case when it comes down to Russia, opportunities were presented for them to say their piece, their defence, get involved to actually clear their name if indeed they're not at fault. But for what I could see, whether it was active right in front of my face and I missed it, or whether it's not and it was just kept out of the way, I didn't see no real defence there. So it leads other people to, well, find their own method of resolve, and sanctions and so on and so forth seem to be it. Other stuff, like for instance EU diplomacy and change. Again, perhaps talk of World Banking Group reports and various other discrepancies or misinterpretations of certain elements within the reports and whatnot. It's perhaps spurred a sense of change in diplomacy and approach towards things, realising, like we said in the last video, that there is more than one way to resolve this issue, and perhaps within the sense of reasoning of it all, that one or both parties may have gone about it the wrong way, so a change is required. Within should we say the political change, as it has been happening for the last, better part of 10 years now, and that's not excluding a few years prior to that, so don't get me wrong there, that whilst my own efforts towards creating a centrist party, a political party entity, has not necessarily failed within itself, but it has been suspended. It's been suspended for a much larger project. Another centrist party, United for Change, has emerged. So, naturally speaking, it goes to show that whilst we were speaking ahead of all things, it goes to show that what has been said is not fictitious. Yeah? It is the resounding emotion of, majority. Beyond that, North and South Korea seem to be getting along better now, and hopefully they will work on being more receptive towards each other and integrate further, with the rest of the world. Yeah. Efforts for poverty is being ramped up. Talks of change within certain basic income tests. In some aspects, this basic income process has progressively let some overly self-centered attitudes, who have forgotten about the greater need, have begun to realise that you have to balance out the understanding of what is a human right and what is a human need. What needs to happen in order to make things move forward. To the point where, when looking at economic states, that apprenticeships are now being pushed forward a bit more now, more so for the younger audience. When talking about the younger audience, and rewarding and recognising these efforts, which in itself is a good thing. Yeah. That in itself leads us on to the purpose of this video. Ta-da! There is a few pages. I have already pointed out that. Which bear with me. Yeah. I have pointed out already that this video will indeed be a little bit longer than others. You know, more so based on the level of content, or the amount of content, and the level of feedback that will be given according to what's been going on around. The video itself covers two aspects: universal basic income, or rather, as some people have been talking about it or rephrased it as, is the basic income, and the other one is AI, or artificial intelligence, otherwise basically growing technology. Now, for us to break it down, let's put that one aside for a moment. Let's move over here. I have 3 documents open in front of me, and these 3 documents will be available, or rather are available, below in the comment section of wherever you find this video. First document in itself is a World Bank Group flagship report, so World Development Report 2019, entitled The Changing Nature of Work. Right. Now, the document in itself, along with its table of contents, should I say, has approximately 460 sections to it. So, whilst it's quite a lengthy read, it tries to come to its point pretty quickly. Yeah, so a few sentences long, moves on to the next section. All being told, it is 143 pages, but taking out all the references, taking out the introduction front page and so on and so forth, you are taking out a good 40 pages, or 20 to 40 pages. So to some it will be quite a light read. To others, because I know it can be quite a laborious task or boring to read through all of that information, the first document is effectively a condensation of, or condensed version, should I say, of that 460 section document, or 446 page document. Right. The first aim is to encourage people to read such documents and read them for themselves, not just take it on face value of, or hearsay of what other people are telling you. Because at the end of the day, and I'll go into it a little bit more, sometimes things get lost a little in translation, you know, or rather a bit of artistic license gets added, and it does. So it's a shortened purpose, and they're shortened for the purpose of the title, and the second aim is to target the adult audience. Now, I say the adult audience because the actual document in itself targets pretty much quite a wide audience, and as a matter of fact it goes right from primary right through to is it tertiary that they call it, or secondary, 6th form and higher education. Yeah, so it's quite a wide group, and it also goes across quite a wide spectrum also, which covers from everything from social aspects through to economic and technological aspects, and the same token also addressing the society, economy and politics. So, as you can imagine, when you're reading through it all, if you haven't, shall we say, prepped yourself for understanding that this is a very dynamic document, encompasses quite a large area of of a country, it's going to be quite baffling, right? The final aim is to quite literally introduce you to the process of deciphering intention and identify what is happening around you, which by and large will assist you in being able to piece successfully together all the smaller detailing of the bigger picture. Right. It's not a definitive way of deciphering. Some documents are very easy to decipher and the intention is absolutely clear. For purposes of conspiracy, the idea is to go through such a process to be able to show you that there is nothing hidden in there, and certainly nothing that is malicious towards anybody in particular. Quite literally a referencing document. Yeah? And in fact, when you draw out all the smaller stuff through deciphering of the document, you begin to be able to see all the key features, right, that's been spoken about, or that's been suggested, proposed. As I've put down, first read what you can of this section, because this particular document, which is 29 pages, it's not very long by comparison, comes in 2 parts. Okay. And then when you reach the end, what you'll find is that I have broken the document down further. So, like I was saying, you've got a larger section, which is just drawing out all the adult stuff, the stuff that's relating to adults, and particularly the subject matter itself, which is UB and AI. Yeah, the revolving concerns and the impacts and so on and so forth. Right? And the reason for this is the exercise is to further identify both the people behind the document, then if there is anything coded into the document's pages, which will in turn, and one way or another, based on interpretation, identify intention. Yeah? So you'll also find further explanations are dotted throughout the document deliberately to keep you going, so no tricks. Yeah? You should know by now, I'm not up for tricking anybody. Yes, I will challenge you. Of course we'll challenge you. Right? That's the whole idea, isn't it? Is to get you thinking. You know, it's kind of like, does he mean this or does he mean that? And you look through a bit more information. He means that. It's working. Or it's not. Maybe I need to tailor it a little bit for my needs. You know, but there you go. Right. If I skip through this, because reading this would take more than what I would more time than I would like to take from you, or keep you in front of your monitor. Basically, the whole document, or the World Banking Group in 2019 report, I decided to use a search criteria known as NIT, or it's an acronym for basically negative income tax. Now, at no given point in time did the search ever come back with an answer of NIT, or negative income tax. But it came back with some very interesting finds. By rights, it should have just come back with saying, nope, I've found nothing, and get on with it in your own way. Right? But it's coming back with some keywords, some interesting little aspects. Then little keywords or phrases from that search term. As you will skip through the first parts of the document, if you're not interested in reading the bigger parts, it came back with various paragraphs, which I've drawn out, and in some areas I've italicized. Yeah. By the time we've finished, we're just scrolling through it now. We have got approximately 100 paragraphs. Yeah. Now, within them 100 paragraphs, you've also got references, so it does pad it out a little bit more. But when you start reading the paragraphs, you begin to find that the kind of, whilst you know that they're skipping, they actually link together. The gaps are all in some way have actually bridged themselves together based on the content. Yeah? And it is based on the common terms that have been found. Now, within them 100 paragraphs, and I'm just progressively skipping through it whilst I'm chattering away. I came to several sections that I noticed across the internet, and I'm bearing in mind 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Right, 10 paragraphs. Now, them 10 paragraphs I identified and are the ones that triggered the reason for actually reading this document. Those came off of the internet, and as I was reading through these internet-based paragraphs, these innovations can, in addition to sparking further improvements in existing programs, also expand the range of possible interventions. For instance, a universally orientated guaranteed minimum may display traits that may be limited amongst current approaches. For example, by being gentler in shape and wider in coverage. It might avoid, and so on and so forth, right? And I'm thinking to myself, that doesn't sound like it's coming from the World Banking Group, especially when you see terms such as too much bureaucracy, too much high administrative costs. More fundamentally, universally orientated programs may be more effective in reducing the exclusion of the poorest from programs. It doesn't piece itself together properly. It's like, that doesn't sound like, so I'm going to have to read this document now. More importantly, have to read it closer, because naturally speaking, trying to absorb all of them 460 paragraphs, anybody is going to be quite a tedious task, if not in some ways a bit of a drain on mental resources. Yeah. So that's why I decided to look it up. To which I actually found that neither one of those paragraphs or which by and large now, as you'll see them coming up, are now actually statements, be it in opposition or be it in support of the document. And this is where the term knit came from, particularly if I was to draw your attention to within the images that are coming up of section 376. The term negative income tax is brought up. Now, granted, from other documents it might be in there, but certainly not in the 2019 document, which is what was being proposed as being the source document. But I didn't find it, though, so it's not there. Right. Excerpts of UB is sat in there, as part of the expansion options. A hotly debated idea is universal basic income, and enshrines the notion of building a guaranteed social minimum through a single program representing 3 design features. Then it goes on further. That is 373. Among the options for ensuring such a form of societal minimum, UB elicits intense debate. For a program to be considered a universal basic income, it needs to meet 3 criteria. See what I mean? Artistic license. Anyway, so I progressed on. After discovering that, it's like, you kind of now got me interested now. We're going to examine this much more closely. We're going to get a magnet and start finding that needle in the haystack, and we have progressively done so. But for the benefits of others, I don't wish to read through it all. And those who have got quick questions, why are there sections missing? Again, there was a search criteria based on a seemingly new term that was used from the original trigger source. As we were saying, the document was filtered to target a particular audience and address a particular concern. In this case, it has 2 threads: universal basic income, or UB, and technological advancement. with the main cause derivative from an emergence of artificial intelligence, be it standard coding practices or quantum structuring. The final being simply to not edit the document's original content but shorten it down to identify the relevant content, which by and large, when this runs through both government and economic entities, it all gets broken down anyway and then distributed off to the relevant departments, or rather it should get distributed off. Remembering that reports such as these are not commands, they're just simply findings from an exercise that has been taken on to identify particular cause and effects and so on and so forth. I think you get the idea. To the point why are portions of the section italicized. You'll find certain parts italicized as they have, for the most part, been used in the next part of this document, whereby the document becomes a speed read. Yeah? And then why are certain words bold? It is for the purpose of referencing to both the original source and to connect the following data with what you have read. It also helps with identifying another aspect which you will also find at the end of this section. The trigger source. The main trigger was a concern that information is being possibly passed across the internet and was not true to its form. Therefore, as to not pass on any disinformation, otherwise mislead anyone. I decided to analyse the trigger source and some of the terms being used, more so because some of the terms used did not ring true to the jargon usually used within the original document's industry set. So a trigger word was found. So what is the search criteria? The search criteria is fundamentally the trigger word as found below. And while this was the leading edge, the rest of the criteria was the concern as expressed in questions 1 and 2. Yeah? So I tried to explain as much as possible, so I will skip through these. Right. For those who are asking, those who don't want to read through the document, which is fine, it's not a problem, hence the reason why this video exists. Alright, so the document search based on NIT or negative income tax is the key. In economics, a negative income tax or NIT is a progressive income tax system where people earning below a certain amount receive supplemental pay from the government instead of paying taxes to the government. Yeah, so it's kind of like flipped itself around. Negative income taxes can implement a basic income or supplement a guaranteed minimum income system. Now, you've got to remember is that whilst it is a relatively new kind of like term, I found this within Wikipedia as a broad search, and its writing had started around about 2004. So to me, again, it shows that it is relatively new, and it started around the time where all the crashes started to happen, and then in turn it cascaded onto other things. Right, because this document is quite large for someone to pick through, a search was chosen in order to simplify both the context and content. Yeah? The key is contextually based. Given the nature of the use of this document, it has been chosen based on it being the core aspect of what the current proposition UB is about. So again, through the terms being used within, shall we say, the artistic license paragraphs, sections, against what is actually being said, it creates that crossover. Now find NIT. So to try and find it in the document, it wasn't there. Like I was saying, it should have by rights returned a result of no such word found, but it didn't. While searching through the document, what was actually found is, shall we say, repeating usable words. Now both the usable words and the interest terms within the actual tables work from left to right and then top to bottom. So yeah, Now, it could be claimed that I'm looking for a conspiracy in somebody breaking wind, or a conspiracy in a fart, as I was saying to you before. But I wasn't. It was more, let's call it curiosity. Yeah? And that curiosity kind of paid its dividend, purely and simply because the keywords once put into the table came back with a very, shall we say, concise version of the entire document in itself. Yeah, starting from initially recognition, monitor or monitoring, right? And when you go through it, you'll find it's encapsulating the entire document itself and expressing its immediate, shall I say, context. And then effectively taking into consideration technology, automation, codifiable labour. When you start placing, shall we say, other words in between them, linking words, then you begin to see the document again, its proposition. You see both the context and proposition of the document. Right, now, again, I'm not going to read through all of these. To do so would be medium suicide or social suicide. Read them in your own time. But as you will actually find through the first paragraphs, through the first sections and throughout, they do in fact link themselves together. Jobs that rely on interpersonal interaction are not readily replaced by machines. The current social contract is broken in most developing economies. Governments need to raise additional resources to invest in human capital and advance social inclusion. Increasing tax revenue, however, should go hand in hand with improving public service delivery. So by the time you actually finish piecing together all the paragraphs, what you actually get is a document in its concise form. Yeah? Which then in turn, taking all the chatter out, what you actually see is all the bones of it all, shall we call it. Yeah? Now when you skip through all of that, you can see again the actual sections that I've highlighted, that were highlighted from across the internet. And effectively what you find is actually somebody who's decided, much the same with campaigning, so under final findings, for those who are interested more about skipping through with me and not wanting to read, it goes to show from the reference on page 18, trigger source, that while intentions may be honourable in the first instance and usual work credible, some will go to further lengths of minor embellishments in order to achieve a given goal. In this case, much like other campaigns, this happens to be Phoebe. The person behind the original document, while by no means an actual issue, just a point laid out for the budding investigator, what was also found through observations is it very much seemed like a female was writing it. Yeah? Hence the reason some of the bold and in bolding. However, while being present, the relevance for notation is indeed that the document should have been written from a gender-neutral standpoint. In other words, one particular subject member should not have been chosen and a generic term or terms should have been used. Yeah? Meaning, or for example, she, he, his, or and her, child and adult, and or person, persons. This then creates the level of equality the document wishes to portray as part of its suggested resolve. Right? I have no issue with all of the equality and the direction people want to go with it and treating each other the same as each other and so on and so forth. But then in itself, it should have reflected that within this by being gender neutral. It should never have actually made a particular gender a centre for that study. Right? It could have quite easily taken out the gender and put the child that was observed did this. And a further reading, these are continuations from political and economic activities also found in other reports from the World Banking Group and International Monetary Fund, 2017 to 2018. So you've got to remember, as these documents roll on, the 2019 one, which is the one that you'll find below the actual video, is the latest one and the one that was brought to the surface through other people linking the documents. Therefore, the inference is that you are referring to that source, right? Which in turn warps the perspective. It does. So I'm hoping that clarifies a few things. It also covers things like carbon taxes, or taxes in general, which is something. Pages that we cover in a short while. Yeah? Right. Now you've read that one, or breezed across that one with me. What you've got now is in the second document, which again is not exactly a big one, it's only 12 pages, and some of it's all repetitive information that I've found from across the internet. It's by no means all of it, this is just the snippets or bits that have presented themselves to me as I've just been browsing it. It's kind of like, oh well, that seems like an interesting one. And then perhaps another one at a later date sprung up and it's kind of like, oh okay, fair enough. I can see where you're coming from. I can't overly support that, but you know, I get where you're coming from. So hence the reason the likes. So what we then look at, okay, is first off, be it good or bad, when exploring the internet and its wealth of information, it can seem like a rattling of noises waiting to whitewash someone's mind with whatever happens to be dragged up. Much the same for the many things that we have covered, particularly today when we start properly exploring UBI. No statements have been edited. Okay? Now, there are a few there, I'm not going to read them all out, the document's there. And then what I've done, that now said, by having an open view on things, let us have a look at these again as a form of starter exercise only to help us focus the mind. Right. What you'll begin to find happen is you begin to see a certain vibration of noise forming. Let's call it a single opinion. Right. Now, within all of that, before I do move on, right, onto the responses, the stuff I've got this side is a little bit more. It's a bit more depth and reiteration, you know, of what's been said. Kind of leading factors, bearing in mind, whilst I have not been everywhere with all this information, a lot of it's based on my own assessment, and then from that assessment I find information out there. It kind of works hand in hand with each other. Yeah, it's from an impartial point of view that this is my opinion, this is what somebody else says either on another side when I'm saying something or at a later date in support of. So we're singing thereabouts from the same hymn sheet. Yeah? Like for instance when you're talking about pensions and so on and so forth. We discussed this back in around about 2011-2014. It's more so when there was a shortfall based on the financial sector's gambling with people's future funds or pensions. This then led to the state pension system and others being ring-fenced. Right? From this, the idea was born, more so when talking about corporate social responsibility, or CSR, somebody will know it as abbreviated. Gave rise in population and taxation requirements, and showing that they're indeed becoming overstretched, that organisations started contributing, basically needing started to contribute to the pot to ensure when people retire from their economic participation, they would be able to continue living as they did when working, instead of falling into a sort of marginal living lifestyle, or at worst entering into a state of poverty. Yeah, given that they should have earned a reasonable standard as part of a thank you, yeah, a handshake, kind of like saying, thank you for your contribution. Granted, this may sound a little like a communist, socialist, liberal approach, but is it? Or is it that we all play our part and ensure we are all capable of not only living for a common cause through a chosen purpose, but also living securely and independently within our chosen social setting or country? Yeah? Which also, in itself, brings us to various other statements that were used across the internet. Right? I've got many different diagrams, economic diagrams and philosophical statements and whatnot from people, whether it be the main advocate for the basic income, from various people in different economic states, such as technology and whatnot, political figureheads, and general activists. So there are many different people, but at the same token, it very much seems like that. Again, I find myself saying that there isn't a vast amount of forethought going into it. They know that it's a good idea. We all can agree with the fact that it's a good idea, but how we arrive at that point is another thing. Well, that said, and now around 5 years in from the original inception of it is beginning to work. Granted, there are some teething issues, but nonetheless, it's beginning to show through. Yeah. Okay, emergence of something that not only has been buzzing around quietly within the system. It's been buzzing around the system for a while and is beginning to gain more gravity. Basically, the idea is the hype in itself has not found its feet properly. Yeah? And the reason for this is simply the idea is too new and very much in its infancy. Hence the term and expression self-realization. Right? Now, flick through. It leads us on to, as a working example, and you'll have heard it through some English mediums, through to the Welsh mediums, as well as the Scottish one, which I've got here, which is the National. And they say in itself that, which is also corresponds with the World Report, the World Banking Group's report, whereas in itself is that it is a good idea. However, to go all out with it is not in fact going to be an appropriate way of doing things. So the best thing to do is to actually start from the worst case scenarios and build the system up so there's more contributory elements of people contributing toward within the system in order to create a cascading effect to help the much broader system, broader audience. Yeah? Generally how it's working. So now, after a few rounds across Twitter and within social media settings, it has begun to capture the interest of politicians and newspapers alike. And it's now beginning to create enough gravity in order to capture the interest of others. And the amount of forethought it lacks is holding it back. The lack of understanding has drawn more interest. Why? The amount of forethought is not, shall we say, coherent with how things work at the moment. Yeah? So the impact in itself may actually be far greater on society and economic, or if I use the term as I used before, it will actually have a greater impact on the social and economic intertemporal equilibrium. In other words, if it's not done right, you will destabilise both elements. And then you will throw politics into a state of disarray, for which then in turn you have economic problems and more social revolutions. Yeah? Or social issues. So what we got here? So where are we at? Yeah, I've even seen people now actually, whether it's they've seen this video or not, or whether they've come to their own conclusion, which is a great thing, is that there are a lot of people out there and now also supporting the idea that it's not actually a human right. It is a progressive element within both society and economics, and the strategies that comes with it within the cyclic motions, and that it's more about equal rights, bringing people on par with each other. Yeah. Now what I've done here is try to break it down a little bit further, because within these statements I found a whole array of images trying to express their point. Everything from relative motion, personal consumption, consumer goods and services, factors of production, yada yada, through to mind's preoccupations, because they're selling the idea of you be on the fact that people will have more time to do this, to do that, to do the other, and so on and so forth. It's very much the preconception seems to be that effectively you're going to get money for nothing, you know what I mean, and then you're just going to be able to waltz around basically with your head in the sky or up your ass or whatever it is, however it is you spend your time, and that the world will be happy and pretty, and the economy is going to be run by who exactly? Well, I hear the resonance of the corporate elite and so on and so forth. Now I use them terms periodically in the conspiring ways. Not everybody is the same. There's only the few that have tried to bring about change, have tried to actually control marketplaces and whatnot, and the message coming back, and specifically through myself in this case, is that they have failed. They've tried it and they've failed. So there isn't a new world order, right? There is a new order to the world, as in, oh yeah, what you're creating. It's not what they're doing, it's what you're doing, based on the awakening and realization of how the world works. So by and large, a new world order is being created by who? You. Us. Yeah? Not them. That's why it's so important to go through this properly, because if you are in turn going to actually create a new world order, does it not need to be done properly? Yeah? Because you have got other statements in here which I will cover a little bit later on in. But then rightfully so, it does actually emphasize some of these images do rightfully so talk about social cognitive theory, the process of goal realization, or just senses of realization. Yeah? The process in which even humans of all varying backgrounds have to go through when they start to advance. For instance, in this one, self-evaluation, self-observation, self-reaction and self-efficacy. Yeah? Or self-confidence. And it is. Goal attainment and motivation. You know, it's all par for course. And in order to create this new environment that everybody says they wish to live in, these little things need to be taken into consideration. Yeah? But when I say, like I said, I'll reiterate it again, when I talk about the actual conspiring aspects, it is just the select few, the cults, the part of the cults who have tried to bring about world domination and Baphomet and so on and so forth. These idealists have obviously got bored. There's a sense of mortality or immortality that they want to maintain within it all, because they don't want to lose what it is they've currently got. Yeah? They know they can't take it with them, and they know they're going to have to restart again. And that scares a lot of people. Yeah, it does. Even those on the other side, they know all of this, but even still then, they hang around because they don't want to have to go through it all again. Some do, some don't. Yeah? Some stay within the more brighter realms, and some of them have to go through, well, the valley of death, the valley of hell. But the point is, it's all part and parcel for learning. I will cover that in the other series, so don't worry about that. If you're wondering what the friggin' hell's he going on about, yeah, I've done series 1, which has 4 parts to it, which is the foundation, and in series 2 we'll go into it deeper. Yeah. So that being said, right, we've got the mindsets there now, and the idea is to understand how these mindsets work, and not only that, how to improve your own, because that is also what the World Document states. It emphasises, based on its own observation, being able to progress. You have to be able to progress yourself. So self-actuation. Yeah? Irrespective of where the terms come from, it is something that people need to take on board. Yeah? It's how we move everything forward. Yeah? So as expressed with our 2014 training videos, this development is also exemplified and supported by such ISOs as the ISO 50001, the British Standards Institute, or being told it will form part of and be monitored as part of economic and political finance, accounting and management systems. Yeah? So this basic income strategy will follow a similar path that has been set out for the management of energy. So what you're actually looking at is, through politics, through economics, and through various industries who are actually watching these videos, such as these, and other activities to form their next set of reports, right? You'd be looking at things like improving on management systems and capabilities, so CSR, so it'll be further advancing that, or corporate social responsibilities, sustainability and proficiency of further subsystems. So when we're talking politically, socially and economically, you'd be looking at the DWP, pensions, healthcare, etc. Yeah? Remember, plan, do, check. We've pointed this out before. It also points it out in various ISOs, or British Standard Institutes, or British Standards, and various other ISO groups. Right? To the point of whereas it'll be improving the standard of living. Whether it relates to healthcare again, or whether it's incorporating more entertainment, purchasing power for based on consumerism, and so on and so forth. Equality between humans, economic progress and their methods, whether it be, in this case I've put here, tech versus human, yeah, or artificial intelligence versus human intelligence, and participation. Clearer paths of development and future prospects. Right. So again, the 2019 report also touches on that, from the youngsters through to, well, the back end of the working age. Yeah. Reduction in national and international tensions, be it personally, locally, etc., or just overall collectively. Right. Increase movements. Like, for instance, leisure and tourism, yeah, leading to what I've placed and put here, or as its acronym, as in ASDA, not wishing to confuse the retail outlet with this one, is an advancement of social development and awareness versus population growth, or ISR, as opposed to CSR, which is individual social responsibility. Yeah? So it's about you and your participation within society. Yeah? The onus is placed on you as opposed to solely placing on either the economic realms or the political realms. See, this is coming full circle now from 2009, right? 2019, it's coming full circle. Yeah? Hence the reason why I said observe all of this. Make sure you keep a close eye. Okay, when looking at the prominent advocates, I can see some interesting points or posts. Some are informative materials, but equally so, some baffling perspectives. Right? Otherwise confusing attempts of dynamics analysis, or the analysis of varying dynamics. Needless to say, it is still interesting and equally compelling that some are making the effort to dissect and understand how this could and would work. Right? Now, this in itself, let me just make sure I'm keeping myself on track here. I have not typed it all out and printed it out and gone all pretty with it. I've just, remember, it's more about being natural and putting it across. And there it is. But again, because there's a lot of information, I have to write it down, or otherwise, yeah, I'll be running off on tangents left, right and centre. So, when looking at all of this, again, best thing for us to do is use some graphical representation, isn't it? At this point, we can go down just one route or another, but you'll find that we can actually go down many routes, and that's in one lifetime. How that in fact works is once you've started something, you see it through to its completion. Now, how quickly you do that is entirely up to yourself. Some in turn are actually overlapped. Yeah? It's because there are relative points or relevant points within each thing you do. Personally, be careful. If you're not used to doing that type of thing, you may end up burning yourself out. However, that comes within your self-realization, your self-evaluation and observation, understanding how you work. Yeah? Making sure that your self-esteem doesn't take an impact within all of this. Yeah? If you believe there's a particular component within your self-esteem that's letting you down, then you address it. Yeah? Like in the images that come up on the side. You've also got other aspects such as the social cognitive theory. Or rather, in this case, it's the second one. Yeah? Some of it is a little bit skew-with, given the fact that understanding the terms being used, like observational learning and modelling, self-efficacy, goals, outcomes and expectancies, that some of them are kind of like either in the wrong order or in the wrong place based on input-output, yeah? Or how you approach something. Okay? We're also looking at, in this case, and we're going to move forward with this. That bit, yeah. Oh, that's that one. And I've had to skip a few pages because when you're working through this and you're looking through the information, you think to yourself, "Oh bugger, I could have put that in there as well." So you end up finding another page of it related to such and such page. So you end up going backwards and forwards. I know, don't worry about it. Like I said, the idea is to create more of a natural environment around this. Like, anybody can do this. It's not just people like myself, you know. Don't be shy, just get on with it. To a point, this is where kind of the conspiracy element comes into all of this understanding, right? And it's trying to iron out some of, how can I best put it, the insecurities and uncertainties of all of this. Like in this next image, Desperate people make ideal workers and distracted citizens. Excuse me. Shame how tough this budget is, Joe, and so on and so forth. Trying to create an understanding of kind of like, well, people are ignorant at the end of the day. Yeah, some are. Yeah, but others, and the rest, are not. It talks about a lot of chatter and whatnot on that one. Much the same when you start looking at the ideals of this image. We can also skip to a timeline one, a brief history of corporate whining, right, from 1842 through to now. It means, you know, it's all there. Now we're going to have a look at some of the attempts. Right, the next one, right, the credits go to the chap himself in the bottom right hand corner of the image, as is with any of the statements that have been brought up. Remember, be it good or bad, that's your choice. Me personally, I think it's a useful tool, apparatus to be able to either bounce off of or otherwise create corrections from. Yeah, to try and put people back on the right path again. It's not trying to mind wash or anything like that. It's just literally that you have the right idea, but just not quite the right way of presenting it. Yeah, and this one is jobs, work, meaning. Right. Granted, I understand what's meant by jobs. Yes, granted, I understand what's meant by work, and then meaning. But by the time you actually piece it all together, as in with this image here, it doesn't really kind of like make too much sense, because paid work, fulfilling work, or fulfilling jobs, each one of them is actually the same thing, or amounts to the same thing. So it's kind of what you're looking for as one encapsulated understanding. You don't necessarily break it down. The only way you would break it down is if you were actually looking for a job and what that work would entail, and in turn what it means to you. Therefore, missing one component is its further meaning, just not a blue spot in the middle, or an aqua kind of marine type of colour. And now, that being said, breaking the notion of jobs down into its components. Now this one actually makes more sense. Maybe it's an evolution of thought. Again, it's a good thing. It just shows that, much like myself and many other people out there, this chap is actually looking at this and starting to reevaluate some of the things that have been said. Because when you look at the actual square, the jigsaw puzzle, yeah, what you're looking at, when people are looking at the jobs environment and what work it does and the meaning it has to you, you're looking at the work itself, the income it actually brings, the purpose that, or the meaning it has to you, and the purpose of the job, you know, and the security that it brings to you. So yeah, it kind of does connect itself. Yeah, it does. Yeah, but what's my slant on it? Yeah, I get it, don't worry. Right, now, this in itself is not enough, as some will realise that the key understanding to an enjoyable life is to be productive in one manner or another. Therefore, it can be determined and agreed that development is a route to all things great. Right? So, whatever it is you want to achieve, that it's not just going to come to you. Yeah. You want to move on to bigger, better things, then you've got to do what is required, what is needed, in order to achieve that bigger, better thing. It kind of speaks for itself, doesn't it, in some ways? To those who it doesn't, that's fine. Yeah? As you'll find through the document, all you need to do is ask. If you haven't put the groundwork in yourself and tried for yourself, then yeah, granted, some people might be a little bit reluctant to actually want to help you, but if you have, then yeah, you'll find people are going to be a bit more ready and willing to offer that helping hand. Yeah? Right. The meanings of things in general, whether it be meanings, or as I've placed here, job, as some people have said over the years. Job means just over broke, or general labour, everyday industry. As we've just pointed out a moment ago, right, the job is the actual presentation of available work. The job itself. The work is what's being done. Job work is defined by the grade from participation achieved and which avenues you choose to apply yourself. Purpose is indeed the function for which your choices serve, be it yourself, that of others, or other specific means to live and grow. Remembering the key element within all of this is grow, is development. Nobody can help you grow or develop unless you're prepared to first help yourself. Yeah? Now, the other images to help you along with it, like this one for instance, creates a more of a much more clearer understanding. Right? What we've actually got is one spherical object. This is sphere. That is job and the security itself, or the security that is derived from the job, from the work, from the income and the purpose and function. The meaning is whatever it means to you and the meaning to the organisation itself. So, productively speaking, it's whatever you apply to it. That is, if it means nothing to you, then why are you there? Find another job. Simple, isn't it? Yeah? You'll find security elsewhere. You know? Now, from that, again, one meaning leading to another, and that meaning and or purpose could be defined or broken up into further other sections. Right? For instance, with this one, it's metaphysical, physical, and academic. Yeah, what you've actually got from that within the meaning of it all is, in fact, looking at be it whether it's an extrinsic reward, intrinsic reward, or whether it's bifocal in the terms of it returns, gives you both intrinsic and extrinsic. Yeah, so job fulfillment. Yeah, job satisfaction. So by the time you finish, the meaning is, do you get job satisfaction from it, and so on and so forth. So there's loads of ways of actually looking at this. There are a couple of other documents. There are a couple of images which I'll show you in a few moments. Yeah? So, by and large, what you've actually got is a whole array of information that could, in that fact, be drawn just even from some of the simplest of ideas, but more importantly, what's drawn from the main documents themselves. And once they are understood and understood in the appropriate context, it all becomes clear. There is no malicious intent. Alright. Right. So resources and processes. Right. That is pretty much what we're moving on to now. As we move through this further, remember, I'm not against the idea or implementation of a basic income. To that end, neither am I against artificial intelligence. I'm simply questioning the meaning, motive and method being applied or otherwise used for both aspects, as both are derivatives or byproducts, otherwise results of each other, or based on the current complaints, or that have created the current complaints. Right, which is reflective of the point being made here from the start of this endeavour. It's how things are done and why they're being done, especially if the why changes as you're dealing with the how. And that being said, again, as is from the beginning, and whilst it acts back round to society, as from the beginning, in manner of speaking, it is basically economics and politics. You know, it's yourselves you've got to blame through all of this. Right, so exploring the meanings, motives and methods throughout. Starting our cycle is because I do care for the outcome for everyone. Is the reason why I'm doing this, as I've said right from the beginning. Because I do care is the reason why I do it. Is I'm not bothered for the most part of what's being said in return, because I know what it is I'm doing is for your benefit, not mine. Well, not solely mine. There is a cyclic motion within it all, but for you. Right. It brings us on to our next image. Right. And from there we'll start to move on to our responses. Right, now I keep saying economics, politics. I keep saying society. Yeah, loops back around. I've said about the formation of other people's images and so on and so forth. I've got no grievances with them, other than the fact that sometimes I think they lack the detailing that's required to help and encourage people to come to understand what's going on around them. Sometimes things can be too basic, and sometimes they can be overly done. And I say that because effectively it's like what I've already showed you already for the first two. So flick back. It's that one and that one. Right. Very basic, open to interpretation and so on and so forth. But as I've just shown you, we can go a little deeper. It makes things a little bit more explicit. It explains things better for everybody then. Because when you start looking at the bigger picture and breaking its detailing down, you can now see the three main components within all of this. Yeah, they're all the external parts, like I've said, like I show here, like for instance the overall function. Like I'm showing with the overall functions is the whole thing. Within that you have politics, economics and society. And then you have in the overlapping sections social regulations, economic regulations and supply and demand. Right? And within them the external influencing factors, you got religion and faith, other global markets or other marketplaces, and law or otherwise judiciary. Yeah? It's making everything work. Centre part is basically the localization of that marketplace, or otherwise it's progress, depending on which way you wish to look at it. See, now what we're doing is removing a lot of anticipation, the kind of like misinterpretation and so on and so forth, what's going on. You can make many different models from these. The thing is we've got from all of this, or that you can draw from all of this, is that whilst singular models, as in like one model that explains just one thing or a couple of things within that model, to then having binary models, which is like having two parts to it, or in the case of this one is a trinary model, which basically means it comes with three parts. It's more of a computer term, but it's explaining that it's got three parts to it. The thing with that is it's great, it works for computers, but when talking about pure logic and trying to explain the finer details and how things mesh together, then binary and sometimes trinary can be a little bit limited. So what needs to happen is we need to blow things out a little bit. So there's one type. Another one, to help you along your way, which we will probably come back and visit again in a moment or two, is this one. Basically, it's again a trinary model, but it has binary components to it, but it has one single message. Yeah, it is basically the supply and demand and cost cycles. What it does is starts from demand or consumption through to the supply and through to regulation. Now, it has the internal external factor, because what you'll see from the red arrows is the movement of certain things within inside that binary function. Yeah. So you'll see the flow as it's going around. So demand, supply, and regulation. But then it has to move continuous flow, or otherwise the model in itself begins to fall over. It doesn't really explain too much other than three elements. So from regulation, there's the need for taxation. In other words, the government's asking for money to make this work. Yeah? Remember, it all serves a purpose towards the end. Yeah? So from that taxation then creates further costs. That cost then is then exported out into the supply. Yeah, that is all added in there, which in turn then moves into the realms of personal income. So you've got society, economics, and politics. Again, yeah, then three hemispheres. So the upshot of it all is you can explain one single thing in many different ways. It just simply depends on what it is you're trying to achieve. And in this case, what we're doing is showing how things mesh together, but at the same token, the flow of something. Yeah? One last one. Again, we may revisit this one, but it's this one. This one now, within itself, is moved away from the trinary model. It's moved into a quadrilateral one, which basically means 4 parts. Yeah. The reason for it is because effectively it allows us to have a look at in more detail as to exactly what's going on. Yeah, we can see the cause and effect. Yeah, which is now going to start to introduce us into the other part, the responses of the actual second document. So again, causality, cause and effect, and so on and so forth. You can see now from actual binary elements there, the singulars, binaries and trinaries, it's basically now beginning to create more of a detailed environment of what's going on, right from location and income, creating accessibility, further accessibilities. That becomes relevant when you start looking at the overlap into prospects, and it does. And also then from the prospects and income improvement, and then so on through to function advancement, function location opportunity. Yeah. Again, they can be reshaped. If you want to have a play around with the model and you want to, if you feel as though you can improve on it, that's what it's there for. Yeah. But again, even then, in itself, we can break it down further. We can go into the cause and effect, and the cause and effect of it all is looking at self-esteem, self-reliance, self-actuation, self-confidence. And this is all within the realms of your job or your employer, or you can either add another tag there, security for instance. Okay? But within all of that, you've also got the outer elements. As them spheres are actually moving around each other and creating the environment, you've got the influence of economics, society as a whole, politics and technology. Yeah? So there's loads of ways of actually being able to create these models without being too explicit and too much detail, but without cutting it all out and leaving too much to question, yeah, or become too confusing or misleading. Yeah, so being too wide open to interpretation or misinterpretation. Yeah. So, as you'll have seen, as I Acquiring an open-minded ability to reason, we also have to explore the dynamics of the environment. So what do you reckon so far? Yeah? It's quite complicated to begin with, but the more you look at it, walk away, step away, look at it again, process it, look away, then back at it again, you'll be able to actually begin to see what's going on. Alrighty, so effectively it is with no doubt a valid concern people have given as to how things have or are progressively panning out, although it would be fair to say, if left unchecked, as we're starting from around about 2005, things would have spiralled out of control and things could have been much worse for everybody. Then we could say things could have been much better. Therefore, this is what this is all about. Betterment. Yeah? However, the unfortunate truth is that sometimes people do or can indeed lose sight of what needs to happen in order to make things such as UB work, or the basic kingdom work. Hence the immediate reply, UB is not in itself a human right, but a process of societal, economic, and again societal development. It's a time-old, socially agreed paradox, if you will. Yeah? Right. That's that one. Let me just bring that one up for a moment. Right. Now, you've seen them elements so far. You've seen them little diagrams, yeah, showing flow, cause and effect, action, reaction, so on and so forth, how things are generally working. Now, I have used the acronym before, PESTLE, so political, economic, societal, technological, environmental and law. Right, so regardless of your PESTLE positioning and or standing, for as long as history is being recorded, there has been a structure or an order in which things work. Yeah? Granted, such statements are not always welcomed, more so given the level of stigma that it has come to receive over the years. Can't deny it has, hasn't it? Again, because of your new world orders and your elitisms and so on and so on and so on and so forth. You know, it has gained itself plenty of negative kind of like feedback, negative kind of like connotations, as negative reputation, and so on and so forth. However, based on a progressive awakening and learning to overcome the boundaries of the mind, when we need something we tend to, and in overlapping parallels, we forage, find, earn, learn to create for ourselves. True, isn't it? No? Then we commission or pay someone else to get it, make it or structure it for us. Otherwise, create or select a leader to organise the collective to secure and distribute it. Then the loop starts again based on successful acquisitions. Yeah? Make sense? It does, because what you're doing is you're creating that loop. If you're unable to get it yourself, or do it yourself, or learn how to do it yourself, then you get somebody else to do it for you. If it's too far out of reach for that other person, then you create, well, or in this case, you create a sense of leadership which is imbued with more power to be able to go out and get more, which then feeds back through the system again. Yeah. However, point 2, the problem is, as I said there, so what happened? There's a greed or control, or rather, things have become, or people have become rather manipulative, wanting and power hungry. Yeah? So up until the point in time where anarchy did actually exist among the growing many, well, and there's so many people beginning to spring up everywhere, moving around, and there's no sense of order, and people don't like that and whatnot, and then it goes against one and goes against another, and it arcs back around. You effectively create anarchy. So a set of commandments were created, or 10 to be exact. Albeit they're basic, this formed the very first socially agreed contract. Then, as we skip through time, exploring other such majoring contracts as the Magna Carta and the various other ones, we can see a Declaration of Independence, there's the Belgian independence, then there's the French Revolution or French independence, to mention a few, as well as other general constitutions and laws alike merging around the 19th and 20th centuries, we can see a pattern begin to emerge. Now, I placed the pattern in there. Yeah. Again, it overlaps, and you find what it actually is, as we've already said in the first point, within paradox, is that basically people progressively, or rather are progressively awakening and learning to overcome particular boundaries of the mind. So they're figuring out what's actually going on. And where they feel as though they've been psychologically kind of like trapped into a particular way of understanding, and there's a sense of resistance to that awakening, then what you get is the mentioned conflicts. Now all of this becomes relevant when we start to look at compulsive or addictive behaviours, the want for more, exploitation, pockets of greater levels of awareness of the space outside the boundaries of the social contract and the broader social awareness. Yeah? So, which is what we were just saying, isn't it? Is that you have become aware of one thing, you work by that one thing, and whilst you're continuing with that particular pattern, there are other people who are spotted around who are seeing outside. Whilst this is being portrayed in a bit of a negative sense, it's also a positive as well. Because without that progressive awakening of the pockets of people, then basically greater levels of awareness are not going to be created. So you become stagnant. Yeah? So you need them pockets, retrospectively, to be able to help you grow. Yeah, for the future. Yeah. So outside of the social awareness, this opposing awareness then creates a margin by removing the first, or rather had removed the margin of the first original stage A of the paradox, and starting it from and finishing at the second stage B, whereby time, effort, and multiples now become a factor. So in other words, as we bring up the image, self-reliance, alright, self-actuation, and all your other stuff has now become more dependency, right? And that's, in a sense, the trap within itself. You have now become dependent upon other people doing things for you. So when things go awry, you're left in the lurch. So therefore, because you don't want to be left in the lurch and left feeling uncertain, you go back to, well, the devil will let you know. Yeah? It's all there. There it is. Alright, for those who have not noticed it yet, it is effectively the few out of the many exploring boundaries for opportunities to grow and expand outwards, for one reason or another. Like I was saying to you from the beginning, it's not about finger pointing everybody. No, it's not. It's the few spoiling it for the many. Even if the many only happens to be as small, like for instance we choose one of the spheres, economics, it's not the entire part of economics. Right? So one part out of the three, it's not all of economics, it's just a small part within the few that's spoiling it for the many. Yeah? Whether it's politics or even society, the few, yeah, within the small part are spoiling it for the many. Yeah? While there are no concrete facts to the mindset and reasoning as such, in all likelihood these changes for the first 5 centuries of contracts will have come from and has perceivably fortified some of our industrial revolutions. No, triggering as an industrial revolution is something else, as found as we move through the document. Fortifying is basically what is meant by the fortifying is effectively that something already exists, and it's already in motion, and then something comes along and it basically fortifies it, it reinforces it, it gives further grounds to bolster the argument. Triggering it is something that happens right at the beginning. It might have been one person who's had a grievance and another person's agreed with it, and then it's cascades from there. Yeah? So that's triggering it. However, on today, based on the growing fact that society's level of awareness is now also growing beyond the original set of boundaries, it in turn has triggered the creation of a general mood that ranges in the realms of being confused, ambivalent, to becoming chaotic. So what's actually happening is we're going back to the beginning again. We're seeing other revolutions take place. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but at the same token, how far does it go? Yeah? This is not just to politics or economics, this is to society as well. How far, realistically, do you need to take it before you think even to yourself, well, we need to find another way of doing this, because by the time we're finished, we need to then start back from the beginning again and rebuild, which then is wasting time and effort and resources. Yeah? Yeah? So while this is the case, primarily this is due to people now identifying what has been happening over the years, with a general complaint being, while the rich get richer, the middle becomes hardened, and the poor are becoming poorer. Yeah? When you look at this closer, each have tried to rationalise this claim as poor choice making by third parties or by somebody else, which places no one at fault. Somebody has to be at fault somewhere because it was triggered and it's being reinforced. Yeah? Whether that reinforcement is the trigger or whether it's a grievance from somewhere else. Yeah? One way or another, somebody's at fault. However, choice is the key element in all things. Yeah? All has to start from somewhere. And it does. Right, choices. Granted, while becoming poor or impoverished is something a person would not naturally choose, the outcome or results of a person's life path is indeed, be it manipulated or not, governed by a choice being made. So it could well be a choice that you made a year or two back, and what it's done through a systematic approach or has weaved its way through the system by word of mouth or networking or cause and effect, has come back around. Right? Because each day that each of us makes a choice, it filters through in different places, and then you get, based on consequentialism, it comes back. Now how it comes back, well, again, it depends on what you've put out. Yeah? You can look at it in two ways. There's to act based on a thought and or third party information, or as a reaction to an action of a third party, either of which, consciously or not, is a matter of volition or choice, and based on that knowledge of, or even lack of knowledge for that given situation. And so again, awareness is based on information, it's based on knowledge, it's based on knowing what's going on. Yeah? So knowingly making the decision. So if somebody calls you a name, you know what that name means, so you're knowingly going to respond to it. But how you respond to it will make the ultimate difference. Yeah? If you want the desired conflict, or a conflict is the desired outcome, then naturally you're going to respond in kind. And then a conflict is ensued. Yeah? Again, granted, life does not come with a handbook. However, because of free will, which again in itself is a statement of the availability of choice, the first act would be to identify what you want to achieve, preferably to perform good acts and deeds, then learn about the philosophies that govern or teach actions and reactions, cause and effect, and consequentialism. Yeah? However, what is frequently missed is that all three philosophies are not actually negatively driven. Yeah? You'll find from time to time that it may sound negative, as those who are studying them are either pragmatists or realists and work to better understand the impact or resulting effect, so there's your negative connotations, of making choices and the reverberations or the knock-on effect that those choices have further on down that decision making chain, as we were saying before, about what you put out is what you get back. Or in this case, if I was to put out a message, will it eventually hit its target or achieve the result I want, or won't it? If I do, will I get some comeback from it? And then in turn, what type of comeback will I get? Yeah? You'll find from time to time that it may sound negative. Well, been there. The greater truth of the matter is, while people are not aware of the finer print within and or surrounding the art of choice or decision making, those in greater positions do. And yes, there has been a lot of bias over the years surrounding political ideals, such as, if your face fits, it's not what you know but who you know, and so on. Yeah? Making sense? Yeah? For the most part it does, because it's everything you'll have heard over the years, especially when you're talking about those times from the 70s onwards. You might not always hear about it now, based on the emergence of equality, which is a good thing, and the fact of filtering out some of these old ideals. Yeah? So we move on, as in with the same spirit, Ode to the Secret. Alright? For those who are a little further ahead, cracking the next statement should be easy, but what the appliance of science teaches you is another. Try this for your imagination, and as my own learning and practice have taught me, extending from one corner to another, be aware, to master the mind within the game of life, as Othello teaches us to take only what is earned, and watch when solitaire reveals the complexities, which are of the asynchronous advancements of the pawn through the sovereign leadership and skill. Right? Most of you, I know you will get it, it's easy enough, but that's the whole idea. However, when you break it all down and repiece it all back together again, does it help you to actually see something a bit bigger, something more about what's going on around you? So for those who is confused, just let it ferment in the back of your mind first, yeah. Then have a play with it again later. Like I said before, read over it, go away, mull it over, come back to it, and then just keep passing backwards and forwards until you generally get the understanding of what's been said. So secrets, there is not one. Although what has been missed out, or the con even, is your lack of drive to learn about what is happening around you, and in turn simply asking yourself and or others, how do they do it, or to do it. Okay? In this case, we can refer it back to the paradox section on paradox, and where A and C meet each other. In other words, you're doing things for yourself. Yeah? As the saying goes, you give a man a fish and he will be able to feed himself and his family for a day, but you teach a man how to fish, he can feed himself forevermore. Yeah? When you remove that teaching, and you just simply give, then you create an air of dependency. Yeah? Or you create dependency. That said, not everyone is going to come to every beck and call to answer your questions, as it may first require an active commitment to learn on your own behalf, meaning we as the third person cannot do it for you all of the time. Then asking a question is one thing, however what you do with the answer is something else. So it's one of those scenarios where you're encouraged to ask a question, right? But if you've done nothing for yourself to begin with, so this is piecing past information together what we've covered off so far, if you've done nothing for yourself so far, then why should anybody realistically want to help? Because you're not trying. At the very least you're not trying. Yeah? Then on saying that, if you do ask the question, because there are people out there that, well, the con and whatnot, It depends on their intentions. What are you going to do with it? You know, what I'm giving you is pretty valuable here. Like, I suppose you could say now, like with these videos, this whole process, what I'm doing is awakening the senses, be it a singular person through to the masses. The question is, or what it largely falls upon, is what are you going to do with it all? Are you going to use it productively to actually start engaging with other people, or are you going to start creating an environment where it's just simply about you? You know what I mean? You as in singularly. So the intention. Right. Hence the birth of the expression, while all roads to hell are paved with a good intention, the payment due for returns and achievements is your commitment and deeds towards your life's goals. Therefore, the first conscious act, beyond learning the above causality philosophies and principles, as I pointed out in section 4, is to get on the ball by creating a plan, starting with some achievable goals, creating a sense of direction, if you will. Yeah? Then based on your learnings and observations, you can start putting these plans into play according to the shifts within the working environment around you, like what we've shown you with the image, which creates the gravity to move the ball. Yeah? So it's knowledge that's required. So getting on the ball, creating plans and everything, that's great. Everybody can jump on the ball, but making it work for you, or making the ball move, is something else. It requires a bit of forethought, it requires a bit of knowledge, understanding as to what it takes to get that moving. Yeah? While simplicity is in fact the best starting block, thereafter always try to extend the boundaries by creating goals that are outside of your immediate capabilities or comfort zone. Yeah? This is the trick, or the crux of the secret. Alrighty. That's it. That is the final. This is now the final section. Alright. Social contract. We've already mentioned about the 10 Commandments. Yeah? That, in a manner of speaking, albeit the basics, that is a form of social contract between each person. If we get political, it's kind of one of the core reasons as to why women from Asian realms wear burqas. You know, face veils. Because what it does is it assists towards preventing other men looking at another man's woman. Yeah, because of the power of attraction. They also say that the weight of the eyes are the windows to the soul, and so on and so forth. In a manner of speaking, it can also be said, if you're paying close enough attention, you'll know whether it's a woman's eyes or not. Yeah? You'll also know that whether somebody's being alluring or not, and so on and so forth. Like, for instance, when being angry, squinting the eyes and all that type of stuff, you'll know the general emotion, because it all happens around the face, around the eyes section. But, as is with many arguments from many parts of the world, societies are moving on. Facial expressions, as a lot of sociologists and so on and so forth are now beginning to express, and this is for those who are still practicing that approach towards social cohesion, allowing people and women out into society, you will find that a lot of the, well, as the World Bank report says, as societies and economies are advancing, people are looking at the whole of the face now. It's not just about the eyes. Yeah? It is down to the wrinkling in the eye, in the corners of the eyes. It's the curling of the nose, or the curling of the corners of the mouth, up or down. The pursing of the lips, or the wrinkles on the forehead. The general shift within the ears and the hairline. Emotions become more descriptive, more understandable. Yeah, and you can see whether somebody's actually frustrated, and you know whether to curb the current approach towards things, or whether you continue with it or just simply don't do it, one or the other. It's part of an evolving society. Not only that, not only is it a part of an evolving society, it is also a part of helping with trust. Yeah, it's about sort of more a way of connecting with people more. And it is. So a lot of and it's not just the West. So don't get it wrong. Across over in the East, down in the South, and in the North, right? They're all preferring this approach. So in actual fact, there's another element of a developing social contract. Yeah? The way to become more cohesive, a way of relating with each other more productively, is by making sure your face isn't covered. Yeah? In spite of what's been said already within the news, put that all aside, there are historical reasons as to why the women from Asia and whatnot, or them territories, actually wear the face covers. But the message is now, as part of a developing world, not just one country or nation or whatever, however you wish to describe it, right? As part of a developing world, to create a greater level of social cohesion and respect and the rest that goes with it, is having more of the face on display. Nobody's, and I've certainly not seen it anywhere, nobody's actually mentioned anything about getting rid of the headdress or even the gown. Fine, keep it. That's how you wish to dress. That's how you want to present yourselves. If that is the case, then so be it. It's just simply this part. Yeah? Not everybody can tell the difference between a male and a female set of eyes, especially in this day and age. Women have long eyelashes, yeah, of course they do, but so do a lot of men. Yeah, there are many comparable likenesses. See there's another element for you, but effectively that's beginning to erode away. Right, effectively any given state and or notion whereby the aim is to bring about order and peace among the many and for the benefit of the many, especially through democracy and democratic means and methods, is a utilitarian perspective or principle. We've already established that understanding as we've moved through. Alright? Based on what is happening today, from the cascading decay of most prior social contracts, bearing in mind this is applicable to every soul whom defines themselves as being human, we are now going through a phase whereby a new form of social contract is needing to be, or otherwise is being formed. Okay? So what you've actually got is from the 1700s, as we've already gone through within section 3, is it? No, 2. Within section 2, as in terms of constitutions and so on and so forth, from the revolutions, there's talks of age of reason. Now, I say age of reason. The word I wouldn't have said explicitly that there is going to be one specific set era where there will be, where it could indeed be defined as an age of reason. Reason being is that the developing sense of reasoning is going to always going to be an ongoing thing. Yeah, so developing a state of reasoning is going to always be there. It came around in the 1800s, has been around ever since. So much so, it even birthed or gave rise to the Georgia Guidestones, which by and large, looking at some of these images, right, is created, again, negatives. Mostly of which is going to be from because they don't quite understand what is being said. Some of it is based on the New World Orders and all the conspiracies and whatnot. So what's actually happened is, whilst it may have even been meant well, because of people's actions and reactions within the hierarchy system, they've inadvertently shot themselves in the foot. They've created a rod for their own back. So people are now thinking, well, it's a bad thing. I did cover this before. Right, and I'll quickly move through it. Right, maintain humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature. The part that I covered, that it's not physically possible to maintain humanity under 500 million. Reason being is that we have 7 billion, so we've well and truly overshot that mark. But quantitatively speaking, when you actually start looking at states, or rather countries, America themselves are nowhere, not even halfway to 500 million. Right? The United Kingdom at 60 to 70 million is pretty much a tenth of that. Yeah? So when you're talking about in perpetual balance with nature, what you're actually needing to be doing is looking at the actual land in which is called a nation. How many people can that nation actually hold? You have a small island like the United Kingdom and various other islands, right from Cuba right through to the Philippines and Malaysia and whatnot. They're not going to support 500 million, because nature in itself is not capable of producing that much, that many or that much resources. Yeah? So the idea is no, find another plot of land that has the resource there, has the resource and capable of supporting that many people. So that's what they're saying, maintain it under that amount. If you start reaching that point and you start seeing the strains happen, then you move people on. It's not about wiping people out, it's about moving people on and balancing the board so as not to strip dry a plot of land, which in turn then you're taking from other people's mouths, which is what you're talking about within the UB, isn't it? Yeah. Which is also the argument within the utilitarian perspective and principles. Yeah? So the first one already then, even within its basic writing, has its own set of complexities by understanding nature in itself and how it's the geopolitical and economic spheres are working right across the planet. Yeah, or even simply still within one country. Right, guide reproduction wisely, improving fitness and diversity. So, guide reproduction wisely. Makes sense enough, especially when you put on improved fitness and diversity. Interbreeding was a big thing way back when. That allowed for populations to breed and so on and so forth and create economic structures and yada yada yada, the rest that goes with it. But as years have gone by, genetics have begun, or the DNA has begun to degrade. And over the years and so on and so forth, based on economics and pollutants and so on and so forth, and lazy behaviours, the DNA has begun to degrade. But then on saying that, in line with the first one, given the fact that the total population is an approximation of 7 billion, whilst it is a human right to reproduce, right, ethically speaking, how many do you have? Is it right for you to have 6, 7 children? And I'm not picking on anybody particular, and nor am I condemning anybody, right? But is it right to have 6 and 7 children and then depend on everybody else to feed them all and yourselves, as if your parents owed them in on benefits? Is it fair? It's not a question whether it's right or not. Is it fair? I get a general understanding. Well, yeah, it is, but there's no answer to it. There's no defence to that. But yet there's a massive resounding. Well, no, it's not, because we're participating within the grand scheme of things, and we're putting in, but that's drawing it back out, so we've got nothing to fall back on at a later date. So again, cycles of understanding. As I say, guide reproduction wisely. Unite humanity with one living language. That's not to say that you disband all of the languages. What it means is find common ground, a language in which all people can speak and reunite themselves under. Yeah. So it's like saying like there's 196 flags there, but create me one flag that would represent humanity in an arena of billions of other planets. Yeah, that's all it means. Like for instance, you've got the United Nations, right? You've got the Olympics and things like that. You've got one flag that represents the whole. Yeah, it's not just one flag from one country. Yeah, it is something that everybody can agree on. Rule passion, faith, tradition, and all things with tempered reasoning. Or tempered reasoning, which basically means to control your emotions. Have a little bit of forethought, which is what we're saying about consequentialism, yeah, or cause and effect. Yeah? Protect people and nations with fair laws and just courts. If this is a new world order, they obviously don't have nothing nefarious tucked up the sleeve, because they're actually saying that, if let's have some fair laws now. If that person has just murdered somebody, then how are you going to treat them? Naturally, you're not going to pat them on the back and let them go on the way, are you? Yeah? But then on saying that, you're not going to go to the extremes where you incarcerate them and keep them gagged up in a mask and all the rest that goes with it, which is perhaps something you would have found back in the Dark Ages. Yeah? So fair laws and just courts. Let all nations rule internally, resolving external disputes in a world court. So effectively saying that you are independent within your own ways. This is not about a world unity where everybody has to follow a set of laws underneath one flag and all the rest that goes with it. What it is like I've been maintaining right throughout. It's about maintaining your own identity if that's what you want to do, because at the end of the day there is 196 different perspectives out there. So naturally speaking, not everybody's going to see things the same way. But at the same token, that then in turn creates the diversity within point 2, doesn't it? Yeah? And then we can create the unity through the living language, and like we said before about the flag, we are all humans after all. Well, we're defined as humans given the fact that we've got 2 legs, 2 eyes, 2 arms, 2 hands, and so on and so forth. Yeah? We have a generally same brain, functions generally the same way. Yeah, so we're defined as humans. Right, and then obviously, because you have neighbours, if somebody does something against you, then you resolve it as it states within point 5. You resolve your disputes externally through just laws, fair laws, and just courts. Yeah? Avoid petty laws and useless officials. Oh dear. Looks like we need to find a fair few more politicians then, eh? Balance personal rights with social duties. Yeah, what is a human right? What is equality? And what is, well, at the end of the day, a social obligation? Yeah? Again, this will all one of the original images will come forward in a few moments. Right, prize truth, beauty, love, seeking harmony with the infinite. Right, if this was a nefarious organisation of some varying description or some bad new world order, encouraging you to discover the truth and look at the more beautiful side, or the lighter side of it all, and the attractive side of it all, and that, as being positive, but ultimately the truth, that would mean that they stand to lose something, doesn't it? If it was that bad. No? And then be not a cancer on the earth. Yeah? Leave room for nature. right? Leave room for nature. So 10 is 1. They've carefully thought it through. They've tried to make one roll onto the other, and then by the time you get to the end, it cycles back around. Yeah? Don't abuse the planet. Don't abuse the resources. Keep things in check so it allows the planet to actually rebuild its resources to be able to then refurnish you with the goods that you need, not want, need. Yeah? And then that cycle starts again, and everybody then in turn has something from their efforts or for their efforts. Yeah? So again, it's when you walk through it with a clear and open mind, you actually find that there's not as bad as what they seem. Yeah? So, age of reasoning. Yeah, there have been many revolutions that we've all gone through. Decaying in social contract. You can read either sections from 38. I've listed a couple there within the SCS's condensed version, or the World Banking Group's 2019 report, as is where some of the social contracts and concerns have been presented. So please ensure you've read that one before this one, right? So you effectively understand where I'm coming from. Right, the next 10 is quite literally, and for example purposes and example purposes only. Right? This is generally what you would actually have to go through, or what you would be looking at in order to rebalance the board and to actually create a new sense of co-social contract in order to move forward. With this one, I've looked at it from 10 points through, from like how the commandments are laid out in 10 and how the Georgia Guidestones are laid out in 10. You know, it's laid out in let's work with uniformity, shall we? So I've looked at leadership, economics, participation, accessibility, resources, equality, moderation, society, accountability, and development. Yeah? Starting from all those whom are to lead publicly or otherwise is socially related are chosen based upon their merit, and either have a general or, if needed, a specific ability to understand the environment to be led, and themselves also accept all components here. Right through to development, communication, exploration and trading are cornerstones to motivation, purpose and progression. Without such the house shall fall. Take it upon yourselves to grow and participate. Expect not of others to do it for you, unless requested, otherwise needed. Yeah? You'll find all of them are pretty much the same as that. If I just pick at the one halfway through, resources. Squandering is the revealing of wasteful minds. Use only what you need, and only take what has been agreed, or has been given by agreement. If you have earned it, it belongs to you. Until it is by agreeable means surrendered. Yeah? It's the balancing at both ends. And then there's the other stuff in between. Have a read through them. Again, it's only for example purposes only, to show you that somebody that you've gotten to know over the past 9-10 years, I've not got no malice intent other than the only intention I've got, and based on my actions, is to help you, well, basically awaken, develop and grow. Yeah? For your benefit, for my benefit, for our benefit. Yeah? And everyone thereon after. Yeah? But from somebody like myself, there's something like that for you as an example, which is representative of such things as you found in the Georgia Guidestones, such as those that you find in the Ten Commandments, such as those you find in the Magna Carta and the Declaration of Independence and various other constitutions that you'll find right around the planet that are not as well known as the ones that are being mentioned. Yeah? The idea is, in one capacity or another, we're trying to help. Yeah? People like myself, the idea is I've awakened my senses beyond the normal bounds of normal boundaries that the mind was set for the mind originally. So, based on other people's help, and so on and so forth, my thanks is my way of saying thanks and giving my appreciations is showing you how to do it. And there it is. So I'm creating that paradox. I'm not just giving you information, as in giving you that fish. What I'm doing is I'm teaching you how to catch that fish. Yeah? Which, by and large, again, was some of these other things. Yeah? It's other people trying to teach you how to catch your fish as well. Yeah? It's just in a different language. Yeah? Different perspectives. The likelihood is this might fall upon deaf ears, and it will require another 10 or 20 different people to come along and verse and chapter the exact same things in 10 or 20 different ways. Who knows? Yeah? Right, now, the general interpretation of some of the words being used, such as merit. Some will assume the worst when talking about merit-based systems or meritocracy. However, the aim here is much a broader one, given that sometimes greatness is not always found in an already cut diamond. In other words, meaning, no, it's not the general meritocracy that you would believe it to be. It has a varying scale, because like within the expression of technocracy or technocratic approaches, it's basically a grading scale. It's left to you to to show your abilities. It's up to you to actually go through the process of learning and developing and then earning your way through. Yeah, it's not about whether you've been born with a silver spoon in your mouth or up your backside. Not in the slightest. It doesn't matter how many people you know and they're all the elites, or whether it's all the socialists. It's about what defines you as an individual and what it is you want to achieve and how you've achieved it. Let's say, for example, purposes that a world government freely supporting all nations is ever born, right? Who would have the right to actually move up that ladder to enter into such a parliament? Well, some would say, well, nobody. Why wouldn't they? You can't agree amongst yourselves now how to actually lead a planet. And when you do talk about, like, for instance, global climate change, you require the North Pole to collapse in on itself. You don't listen to some of the other bodies that have been created. As a matter of fact, there's so many vetoed functions going on that nothing ever gets done. So why wouldn't they? You've got a point. So who has the right to move up? Now there's a bit of a blank drawn, isn't there? Well, everybody has the right, if you're willing to actually do what it takes. Yeah? Why shouldn't the guy from a family or mediocre or low-ranking family, why should they not have the right, he or she, not have the right to work hard and reach lofty heights, to lead or to serve or whatever? Well, they have the right, don't they? It's part of equality, it's part of development, it's a reward. And there it is. Which again is all part and parcel of what we were saying before when we're looking at that image. Yeah? There are various other images that we've been using throughout. That one being another one. But then at the same token, you don't allow barriers to get in your way. As long as it's not for the wrong reasons, then you learn to overcome them. And then in turn, you reach, as with a hurdle race, you overcome each hurdle and the person who successfully overcomes all of them hurdles and the quickest rate reaches the finish line. It's there, isn't it? You know, you work at it, you become an athlete. You become an athlete. You don't work at it, and you don't become an athlete. It's that simple. It's the same with anything. You don't learn to read, then you're not going to be able to read a book. Yeah? And so on and so forth, no matter the example that you give, or I give, or anybody gives to that effect. Yeah? Right. Tinker, tailor, soldier, sailor, rich man, poor man, bigger man, thief. Tinker, tailor, soldier, sailor, rich man, poor man, bigger man, thief. Yeah. What does it mean? What it means is, with any quadrilateral models or any models of any varying description, what we do is we've started, or many people have started, to break things down further. So what you can look at is effectively like Tinker Tailor, right? People within the economy, the workers, soldier, sailor, those within the armed forces, rich man, well, that could be anywhere, right? Poor man, beggar man, thief. They generally have something in common, specifically poor man, beggar man. Right? Thief in itself is somebody who's separated themselves by ways and means of their deeds and actions, so they become incarcerated. So by the time you've actually finished, them 8, shall we say, titles kind of explain the whole realm, in the manner of speaking, realms of people. It becomes relevant when I see statements such as these. Right? If you build a chair out of a tree until that moment in time that tree was available to everyone else, people could sit under it, eat apples from it. It cleaned the air by taking in carbon dioxide and putting out oxygen, and the rest of that goes with it. Alright, steal. And so what's that called? Alright, stealing. Right, now, that to me is somebody who's obviously not paying attention, right? Who is new to this life cycle, shall we call it. So they're a new soul, right? They're beginning to wake up pretty quickly, and they're rather sensitive to their environment, and therefore firing off at the hill without actually thinking about what it is they're talking about. Right? This image you've already seen. Right? It has two ways of looking at it. One's a positive way, one's a negative way. The positive way answers the question, or rather, shall I say, it answers that statement. So this image, effectively what it's saying is like I was saying to you before about being given a fish or being taught how to fish. Effectively what you're actually doing within the cyclic motion itself is that everything that has been acquired through the middle one, the economics, right, all costs are being passed on and regulated through the government back to you. So you're paying for somebody to acquire goods on your behalf, or B of paradox section 1. Yeah? So we've skipped out the part that you're doing it for yourself. See, this is the other part of the argument which will come in a moment. Right, so the positive effect again is the fact that based on demand and consumption, this is a part of a social agreement, a contract if you will, that you've allowed certain elements or an economy to form to acquire goods on your behalf, to actually then create the goods and supply them to you. Politics in itself and law has come into play because of the fair treatment in which you wanted, or which is required, or what is needed to ensure that economics provides you with what you need, and at a fair price, which by and large is what you're paying for, right? Based on the resources of what the land provides. So what you're doing is trading. The negative aspect, unfortunately, is the fact that you are, or we are, being passed on all of the costs. And there is a forever growing profit margin within the fact that effectively a business never actually pays for anything. You do. Right? And then the cost is required to actually sort out the economy, and that the economy pays for, is then secondarily taxed onto you. So the government then in turn is acquiring costs on a twofold basis. Like I said, it was going to be easy, and it works on a twofold basis. So in actual fact, the statement that I've just shown you is actually blown completely out of the water, because over the years the realization is that people do need these things. These things work on a mass scale, especially now, with, again, like I say, from 60 million people to 7 billion people, right? We need these infrastructures in place to be able to supply the demand. Yeah? The demand is the fact that you want a chair out of that tree, and so does 1,000 other people. So economics, or as you were pointing out before with the basic income, is that other new businesses are being born to provide you with a chair out of the same tree, so therefore creating 1,000 trees out of 1,000 chairs out of one tree, for which you pay for it. Because there are going to be costs that emerge from actually producing that chair to begin with. Be it labour, be it food or time or things like that. If you want to arc it back to the old days, somebody's made a chair out of the tree. It's taken them time, it's taken their imagination, the creative skill and the ability to be able to do that. You want a chair out of it, so that person applies that self and same time, that skill, the ability, the fact that they've needed to consume other stuff to be able to keep themselves going. That in turn comes at a cost. So you want that person to give you that chair based on some displaced understanding that you have an entitlement over that based on their production, their creativity. But yet in turn you preach about, in this current time frame, that people make businesses and so on and so forth. It's rather kind of like contradictory, conflicting statements. Yeah, I know where you're going now, and you know where I'm going too. So by and large, the agreement was trade. If I've produced a head of corn, or a quarter acre of head of corns, I will trade that for your, say, quarter acre of apples. We trade. But not everybody wants a quarter acre of apples, so they found some precious metals. I tell you what, these might be worth something to these other people. How about I trade these precious metals for your head of corn? Some currencies involved, or another means of trading. That is a social agreement, that is a social contract, and that is between people. Economies are then born from that, because at the end of the day it was understood right from the beginning, it's first come, first served. In that regard, if somebody's found that tree and you weren't there, how do you know you would ever have actually found it if that person hadn't have surfaced and done what they'd done? You don't know that, do you? You might have picked one apple from that tree and never seen it again. That doesn't automatically give you an entitlement to it, because it's statements like that that I can play the devil's advocate, or rather play the devil himself, or this deity if you wish, that, well, the planet's mine, right? And you've stripped my planet through your so-called entitlements of all its resources, and not once have you paid me ground rent. You've destroyed the atmosphere that I've helped towards creating through with Mother Nature, be it her the devil herself, who knows. Between us we have created this planet, and we've allowed you to grow and prosper. go forth and multiply. You've stripped it all near enough dry and destroyed the atmosphere on it. Yet not once have you paid me any ground rent or any due to the resources that you've consumed. See, we can play that game as well, or I can play that game as well. Right? But on saying that, remember, that's just role playing. It's just a way of expressing a point that you got a displaced understanding within it all. Yes, people have become profitable from it, from economic cycles. They've been able to understand the profit and loss and so on and so forth and made it big on it. But then, at the same token, if they're providing a service that is valuable, then I don't hear no arguments. So I think in retrospect, what we're actually hearing is just a way of, shall we say, bringing the reputation down of people in order to actually bring up the reputation of, in this case, the basic income. Which, like I've already said, I'm not actually against. Because I do know that looking at this tripart model, it has in fact become unbalanced. It has. Certain areas have become overinflated. Certain responsibilities are not being met. So I'm right there with you, so don't worry about it. Alright? They know. I don't know how it works. And you do now. Yeah? So the upshot is that tripart model, that flow model, has become unbalanced. It's become overinflated in areas, and therefore bottlenecking the resources back to its original source. Yeah? Or, as within that statement, back to where it came from. Or for those who need it. Yeah? Right. That's the ranting. When I use the term headers, the 8 headers, the Tinker Tailor Soldier Solar side of things, we're looking at Tinker Tailor. It's the support network, basic income with a cut-off threshold. So these are the suggestions now in this regard. So threshold: personal, small to medium enterprises. So personal being new businesses, and medium enterprises where the threshold kicks in. Soldier sale is a wage increment with family support, so I guess it would be a form of basic income. Cut-off threshold when reaching higher commissioned officer roles. Yeah. Rich man is as with medium and multinational enterprises, including executives and whatnot, there should indeed be a cut-off point. If they want a basic income, their shares or salaries or however it is, or whatever it is they're being paid at the time, should be capped or reduced. And specifically with those who are in public funded organisations, should be reduced below the PM's wage. And it should, or otherwise, the leadership role wage goes up. Right? I know that's kind of flying in the face of what we were saying before, given on what gets done and so on and so forth, but again, it's rebalancing of the books. I suppose this is part and parcel of what some would call the doomsday. You know this? Alright, poor man, beggar man. I said basic income is applicable. Alright, then measured according to the prior markers, so the Tinker Tailor Soldier Sale. Right, and thief, while it is applicable to this grouping, those incarcerated will receive it upon release and subject to pro conditions and rehabilitation. So therefore, we now start looking at the merit-based system again. It's like if you want to utilise the basic income, right, you could indeed be looking at a whole host of other issues, like for instance, enabling their ability to steal again. I'm not saying that they will, I'm not saying that in the slightest. What I'm actually saying is that not all people are predictable. Yeah? You have to be careful that if they're a drug dealer, are you going to be enabling them or affording them the ability to be able to buy and supply more drugs? As those with drug users, are you enabling or otherwise putting in their way the ability to actually buy and consume more drugs? The same with theft, the ability to buy their way out of situations, whatever level. I'm not implying anything other than the fact that you're enabling them further to be able to cover the tracks. Yeah? So you have to be careful with it. Yeah? This is why it keeps getting said that there is very little in the way of forethought going into this. This is just people throwing themselves into it because it sounds like a great idea for them. No matter how much preaching I hear about other people, there is a personal motivation behind it all. Yeah? Of course I would stand to benefit from it given my position, but that's not the point, is it? The point I'm making to you is that I'm setting out these little things here on my bits of paper that actually make sense. Is that there are other people that should be taken care of before me. Right? They're in a far worse position than what I am, and so on and so forth. Yeah? It's about positioning, responsibility. Right. So that being said, and as the document, as the report in 2019 report also lays out, is in the terms of taxation. Now we've covered some of the aspects in the document. It really leaves me to say, be careful with taxation, as by and large any taxes, as evidenced around 2015, the energy market actually passes on has levied the tax onto their consumers, yet have not really done anything with their maintained profit margins. Again, it's not applicable to everybody. There are many companies out there that have invested it in the terms of competitions, have invested it in terms of business development and so on and so forth. Yeah? But there are other organisations out there with, I'm not parting with it, I've got shareholders to take care of. Even after they're taken care of, there's still a mass profit and profit margin there which is not being used for anything. And it's not. So you're hoarding money. Right, further to this, other organisations, institutes are still paying themselves overinflated wages and salaries, when they themselves are less productive than the governing bodies regulating them, which in themselves are in some instances ineffective. Yeah? Like the recent ones we was hearing, was it in the banking industry, somebody was paid a bonus, there's a bit of a pat on the back, there, oh, thank you very much for failing, you've buggered up and all this lot's going, yeah, we'll pay you a bonus, good on you. Shame we all weren't paid like that. Yeah, everybody'd be rich then, wouldn't they? Oh no, we can't do that. Right. But the point and matter of it all is again this displaced sense of understanding as to how these things work. If the individual consistently and repetitively fails, then they shouldn't be keeping their job. It's that simple. It works everywhere else. Why shouldn't it work at the top? Yeah, I'm not interested. I've told you I care enough to be not bothered. Alright. Alright, so passing on the tax to the consumer cannot be classified as a success, as necessity to consume such products negates the brownie point. Alright, so we look at profit margins, wages of employees, administrative methods, machinery, etc., salaries, maintenance costs, productive distribution, tax and shareholder returns. But still, this still leaves a profit margin. For what? If indeed all expenses have been covered. Again, you're hoarding. It should be, like they're showing you within the actual tripart flow model, it should be just moving fluently. Right? And if you're doing a good enough job and you get the wage for it, that should be your return. Based on your economic involvement, the ability to, or the fact that you're providing a valuable service. Yeah? When looking at taxes and so on and so forth, you have to weigh up income and expenditures. So in income of government, you're looking, like for instance, income tax, PAYE, right? The PAYE, yeah. National insurance and pensions, VAT. You got duty tax and other stuff that goes along with that. Corporation tax, interest payments on taxes, investments, bonds, etc., interest rates, government-owned buildings, inheritance tax, property-related taxes, council tax, both domestic and business, green taxes, road taxes, import and export taxes, fines and penalties. There's a fair old amount coming in there, aren't they? But yet, at the same token, it's wages and golden pensions, second homes and benefits, security called command nessus, which is fine. Right, the judiciary, which is also part funded anyway, which is also part of the fines and penalties. Social and healthcare, in our case, in the United Kingdom's case, it's the NHS. You've got your memberships and world government. Right, as this is being sorted out now anyway, third world support, the DWP, benefits and pensions. It seems to be very little in the way of anything going out, but out that is basically completely outweighed by the amount that's coming in. Which by and large, when you look at it, it goes to show really why memberships to other governments are so frigging high. It is, because it's a way of drawing money out again. So again, back to the tripart flow model, is people are drawing on these overinflated environments, but whereas if it was flowing freely, you wouldn't have to worry so much about it, right? To the point where this is where some of you conspiracy theorists are right when it comes down to the terms of the banking holding other assets to ransom, is that realistically by now national debt should be insured, especially in advanced economies. National debt should have been cleared, yeah, and various other debts should have been cleared, yeah. But because of this thing, like we were saying before in the public services, there's too many hands in one pot taking what they're not entitled to. Ever likely the wonder that you get another set of 10 example kind of like social contract, which now encompasses explicitly leadership. You know? Because it now has to break it down. Again, what you do with this is entirely up to yourself. But like I say, it's there to show that it can in fact be done. Okay. Now everything else here on after, I can give myself 5 minutes, right, is going to be the AI. So you will find a quick marginal disruption within the video. Given the fact that we've been running for approximately an hour and a half to 2 hours now, I will make it pretty quick. Well, as a matter of fact, 1, 2, basically 4 pages, and it is pretty much self-explanatory within itself, to be perfectly honest with you. So give me a moment and I'll be right back to explain that one for you. Alrighty, I've had myself a quick 5 minute. I'm going to sort out all the bits and bobs. I tried to keep this to as very little takes as possible and try to get it all done in one go. But as you'll have noticed, well, it's rather obvious, isn't it, how long it's been so far. We've taken approximately over 2.5 hours of your time already, especially for those who have actually made it this far. As I have said right at the beginning, skip through it if you need to. You know, that's the benefit of today's modern technologies, today's media, is we have the capability to be able to pick and choose where we want to be in a particular video, such as these. Additional to that, technologies also provide us with the capability to be able to provide you with digital documents to read through some of the transcripts that have come from the videos or that support the videos. Yeah, and then in turn you can look for that point within the video. Yeah, as you'd have guessed, yes, we've now moved on to the AI section. Now, within the supporting document itself, cutting to the chase, you'll find within the document itself is that under the AI section, right, I've drawn out particular elements from the report again. Right, with such things as manufacturing, repetitive procedures, hazardous industries, codifiable and non-creative sectors, gig economy are some of the keywords that are coming forward within the 2019 report. Not only the report, but what is identified within economic segments that do not require human interaction. So how to do this? As I say, well, let us do this by using the keywords above and their definitions, and then see where it takes us from there. We both know we don't want to drag this out too much further, although some of you seem to be enjoying it because you've come this far through, and appreciate it. Thank you. But I'm not going to read through each one of these sentence by sentence, but what you will find is I have broken down the actual words. So I've taken the keywords out of the document and in turn elaborated on them further for those who haven't gone out and sought the understanding for themselves. Yeah? Like for instance manufacturing, also including fabrication and prefabrication industries, right, is identified as both the production and reproduction of goods, merchandise from the results of the mining, extracting and combining of raw materials and or primary developed goods or merchandise. Yeah. Warehousing and distribution, while being a new keyword, are also important components as they represent the function whereby materials and merchandising are both stored and then distributed from, be they nationally and or internationally. So again, we move on to global economics. Right, so it's given the bad rap that it's received, global economics is a bigger part of ours than what most people are readily accepting. Some of you purchase your goods from, let's say, Banggood.com, right? That's not in the United Kingdom if you're in the United Kingdom, or if in America. They might have other branches elsewhere, but by the time you've ordered the stuff, it's come from somewhere else on the planet. And that's global economics, or globalization. Yeah? Repetitive procedures. Repetitive procedures are those functions that are readily found within the latter two segments. Yeah? And seem to find the most injury of and avoidance by human labour, or as the expression goes, laborious or repetitive injury. Yeah? Codifiable and non-creative industries. While not an industry set of its own, this is in fact a function found in most industries as explained above. Codifiable is in itself the next step after identifying a repetitive procedure whereby the repetitive task, whether physical or mental, is broken down into subroutines that a machine can understand and follow through with, as a human would do to complete a varying number of or specific tasks. Yeah. Hazardous industries. Currently would be representative as the nuclear energy industry, volatile chemicals and or biologically unstable industries. Yeah. Gig economy, while being a new term that has come about with the Internet of Things, literally speaking means a temporary economy. Yeah. Artificial intelligence. This is highly subjective, and moot subject. However, when looking at the basic meaning or expression, it specifies that artificial is something that has not been created and or grown from what is usually defined as a naturally occurring means of existence. Yet intelligence is holding the capacity to process information, events and or general activities, rationalize, otherwise satisfactorily normalize randomized findings through to a desirable singular and or multiple resolve output, while being able to conceptualize, otherwise comprehend varying emotional states and respond appropriately. Yeah. So there's a lot even within itself, it's sentence, just within short paragraphs. We can look at some of the other actual concerns when you're talking about artificial intelligence, as in sentience. This is usually defined as being human, having two of each receptor, motor function, such as I was saying before, hands and feet and everything, a mouth for communication, nose for sensory functions, and genitalia, the capacity to reproduce. But then by the time you've actually finished with artificial intelligence, as in the argument is that a robot or an android would have all of them functions, because the capacity to reproduce, well, it can be defined in many different ways. It could be technology for cloning, it could be technology to create another physical being. Intelligence in itself, if it's codified properly and so on and so forth, would in turn follow the same pattern of growth. Yeah. By the time we've explored the panic in audience surrounding this AI development, it is believed that those in opposition in some ways that this new sentience would eventually trigger the next mass extinction, as we were saying before about triggering and not reinforcement. Okay, it's in some shades of grey. It could be forgiven based on the information embedded within human history and portions of that information which is understood to surround humanity's general existence and attitude, as well as its behaviour, and that some would think in such ways, i.e. the fact that AI could trigger a mass extinction. And why wouldn't such a new entity act in such a way? After all, a human is guilty of it too, you know. But again, it's all down to the programming. It's all down to how far you in fact take it, as pointed out in sections 1, 4 and 6 within UBI. Right, now in the responding aspect, there's one image. AI is not all about physical manifestation or the creation of a physical entity in order to actually progress any form of industry. It could in fact be just simply fixed static equipment. Yeah, fixed static or otherwise semi-mobile pieces of equipment that enables us to do what we wouldn't normally be able to do ourselves physically. Yeah? Like, for instance, looking at, a smart park that somebody's done for us. Yeah? Everything right from smart landscaping, so going in an anti-clockwise motion, everything from smart landscaping right through to smart tourism. Yeah? And then the sat square in the middle, you've got smart governance and smart infrastructure. If I look at the bottom two, alright, which is smart agriculture and smart well-being. At the end of the day, AI is embedded in all of that, or artificial intelligence, or the ability to process more information and more accurately. I've been known to make mistakes or miss out certain bits of information, accidentally of course, having to process all that information. So I'm not perfect within itself, right? But smart agriculture, big combine harvesters and tractors and now have onboard computers, whereas it could probably measure the ground height, right? And harvesting corn, say for instance, requires out of the, so let's call it 3 foot, right, product only needs 18 inches of it, right? The first 18 inches from the top. But then the ground varies in a different area, so it would measure that, right, to take the right amount. Not always perfect, but at the same token, that is the principle of it. Smart well-being, or wearing the smartwatches, and so on and so forth. Monitoring your health and well-being are from them, and then it moves from the smart park into smart healthcare. Computers and various technologies monitoring your health, your heartbeat, and so on and so forth. It's from things like that, or from the point of reading and learning about how the first conceptual computational devices and binary code came about, I decided to basically share with you a very brief kind of outline of what I've seen in my timeline so far, and to show you that at the end of the day I don't have really any issue with it. It's brought about a great deal, but whilst I'm not going to go through the whole list here, you can see that right from Betamax transforming into VHS, I was around with a Betamax, right through to the pound note, through to through to the internet, or analog phones and the internet and personal computers, and then from 4-stroke basic engines which are transformed now into electric cars. Businesses and governments rise and fall, sons become fathers, and so on and so forth. You generally, just reading it, you'll generally get the idea. So personally, I'm quite happy to see changes made. However, my concern would be to what extent our industry is willing to go to in employing such technologies, which is effectively what the report is also saying. It is, because you've also got taxation implications within that as well. Because if a person invests £1,000 into a piece of technology and ends up ending, let's say, 5 jobs at £1,000 a month, now that's £5,000 returned. You take off what it costs for that piece of machinery, so if it costs £5,000, in the first month you've got your money back, so every month thereafter, it's all profit, other than its maintenance or upkeep, which is going to be a lot less than the £5,000 of wages. So that in turn is actually increasing profit margins. But again, it's what you're doing with that profit margin. See, again, back to the tripart business, the tripart flowchart. Some parts are becoming overinflated. So the idea is how does it work? What businesses have also got to remember is that, I can go and take this to here, there, and everywhere. But by the time you've actually finished, by the time all these tax havens have attracted a lot of businesses' attention and everything, and they've got a captive audience, what do you think's coming next? It seems to be one or two people say, well, that'll never happen. The extinction of the dinosaurs would never have happened, would it? Or didn't it? But it did. It happens. Why? Because people get greedy. Because people like the idea of profit and so on and so forth, and hoarding. All businessmen are the same. To one extent or another. Granted, not all the same in the nefarious terms, but generally speaking, when we're talking about building a business and building a profit margin whereas it supports a personal life, everything thereon after is profit, especially once you've paid all of your bills and everything. So again, circular economy. But how that circular economy works, again, is another thing. Excuse me. And this is what we need to be careful of. If it's done right, then people within the economy still profit for their time and their service, alright, and whether it's a specialist or not, and those who require the services and then receive the services. Yeah. So it works productively for everybody. Yeah, it does. And now, in most cases than none, yeah, as it looks here, no, not everybody's lazy, right? Sometimes they don't know where to fit themselves in. They're not certain of their own capabilities, which then becomes quite paralysing, and then effectively they stop participating. So basically their self-efficacy has begun to fail them, or self-confidence, which in turn has a knock-on effect onto their self-esteem and so on and so forth. Yeah. So this is where all this participation and apprenticeships and motivational groups that are trying to help people to get back on the ladder again, this is where it all applies. There it is. So the idea is to try and avoid blindly reshaping any given economic and societal environment. Then the dash is not just limited to economic leaders. Well, then it's not just limited to them. There is also political superiority, or societal principle ethics, abandonment, and so on and so forth, where your degradation comes in. There it is. For all persons, a more profound existential thought should exist and revolve around not becoming too dependent on AI technology, as this would create or lead to a greater level of unappreciative and lazy societies based on otherwise bolstering further a false impression that human life and existence is above all others. And that's already been proven within certain statements that actually are made from people. Alright, it shouldn't be taken literally from some of them, because again, they're still figuring it out. But then on saying that, then we have, again, part of the conspiracy elements, and the founded ones, that our high up elite ones, think they're actually above all others. Right, rather than trying to help others move up. If not actually trying to create a sentient entity by way of playing some form of imbalanced God role, then the idea should be simpler by creating a supporting mechanism in order to maintain already existing infrastructures and processing data to find details to cures, otherwise generally assist and without form in the development of the road ahead. Yeah? So I could rant on, but I'd rather not. So skipping on, while technology is a great thing and has brought us on a long way over the past half century, it should not be the be-all and end-all. The industry sets in the above pages should not rule out all human labour. Now we can see where the 2019 report comes into effect, as the above can qualitatively be measured in opposition whereby human labour represents itself, otherwise is applied to something that holds intrinsic value and requires a form of instinct and or intuition to function. Separating further as being non-predictable and having no specific routine based on varying individual and or cultural behavioural responses. Otherwise an environment that creates, forms or holds or otherwise reforms multiple perspectives. That in itself, whilst being kind of tricky to get your head around because it's a bit of a tongue tie, could encompass such industries as everything from science, medicine, social care, arts and crafts, exploration, teaching, law, security, politics, civil services, economics, business and technology. And they do have specific elements in there. So there's still a vast area in which to participate in. But as it's specified, as I've pointed out, within each of the key words themselves, there are still going to be requirements of roles within that industry. So those who are currently working in there do have the opportunity to move up, or otherwise develop them skills, their current skill set, to be more transferable and move into industries whereby they can be of use again, or apply that skill to help that environment become productive. Because depending on what it is, like for instance manufacturing, or depending on the type of manufacturing, fabrication, you got arts and crafts, yeah, or even teaching, yeah, or development and operations. So even still from just that one sector alone, there's 3 further sectors with a bit of fine tuning that a person can move into. Yeah. It's all there. There it is. There's nothing really malicious or nefarious about it all, other than the lack of attention to the detail that some are just simply not paying to. Yeah? Yeah? They've got themselves so het up and bound in all the conspiracy stuff and some form of hatred towards some of the acts that have happened in the past, so credit given where it's due for that, because I've even seen it myself. So credit given where it's due for that. Right? They've got themselves so het up and bound in that they're unable to see their way out. And I'm hoping that those who do see this actually have the courage to pass that message on, right? Or otherwise point them in this direction and let them watch this, if they have the patience to watch it. Yeah. But again, it can be skipped through. Yeah. It is all about you. It's all about us getting it right. And it's about us getting it right for everybody else as well. Like I've used films in the past, it's that typical Matrix scenario right at the end, isn't it? Alright? Is that not everybody wants their awareness expanding. They don't want to be awakened. And if they don't, that is their choice. And if it's meant to happen, they will find their way there. Yeah? Beyond that, it's just simply helping people to move forward. And those who are a bit reluctant to move forward, you encourage them to move forward. You can't leave them, especially if it's homeless, you can't leave them in that position. It's not about being untidy or anything, it's about providing them with a better quality of life at the baseline that they have chosen to live at. And it is. But again, at the same token, videos like this exist to even remind them that they're there because of a choice that is made. Whether they know it or not, be it on an action or reaction or neither of the two, they made the choice, therefore that's where they are. But then I'm not saying that the people that who have knowingly have chosen particular responses, and then responses have led to that individual being on the street and they've left them there, I'm not saying that they can be exonerated from it, yeah, that their actions are condoned, not in the slightest, because remember, choices and balances have to be made. Because if somebody doesn't know what's happening, then it falls upon the individual who does know what is happening to lead the way. Yeah? That's the whole part and parcel of progress. It's on the leadership. It's about leading people forward for the benefit of the people. Yeah? And then your reward comes from that, be it intrinsic or extrinsic. Yeah? Usually in leadership it's a bit of both. It is. Because it is all about the learning curve. It's about you've moved forward because you've shown the greater awareness of the need of people, and then they choose you to lead them. So all that type of stuff. It's a time-old and time-tested thing. It just gets to the point, it has come to the point now where unfortunately it has been the privileged few that have been shoved up to the top and says, right, well, you've got more money than them and you're agreeing with everything that I'm saying, so there you go, you're leader. But then in saying that, you have to be careful with the flip side, you do. So you've got the difference between what is a leader, or rather what is a dictator and what is a leader. You know, so I see. It's a good, what am I looking at? Better part of 3 hours. It's been a bit of a long slog. Now can you see why I've been dragging my heels a little bit? Because I actually thought that I condensed this right down. A few pages here, a few pages there. Yeah, fair enough. I'll skip through all of that lot, make a few notes on it. There's a few images for me to work off. I can speed things up rather than, you know, pointing out and keeping condensing and convolutions and so on and so forth. All of a sudden, okay, fair enough. It takes a while. For those who have stuck around, good night and appreciate it. For those who have skipped through, I hope you've learned something from the bits of information you've found and from the documents. For those who have not even reached this far, no point me saying anything, is there? Not even here to hear it. Do you know what the sound of a tree sounds like when it falls in the woods? Right. Enjoy the rest of your day, even though it happens to be night time at the moment. Whatever's left, enjoy it, and I will catch up with you again soon.